afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a Flyers Deadline, Trade Deadline, Flyers Daily Special, something like that. Those weren't the words that I meant to use in that order, but here we are anyway. Brian Smith, Bill Meltzer, here with you at Wells Fargo Center. Jason Myrtetus is with us in an undisclosed location. He's in his bunker as the Flyers go through this trade deadline, which is now 11 minutes past 3 o'clock, and there's been lots of action today, gentlemen. That's for sure. And Jason, you had a chance to talk with Torch today in Hockey and Hounds, and there's no question that this has been some noise around the team here for this past week, and probably has something to do with how the last two games have gone.
No doubt. I think something we look at athletes a lot of times as mercenaries and superheroes that don't go through normal human emotion, and their whole life gets uprooted. I remember when they acquired Jamie Drysdale last year. He had just packed for, I believe it was a 9-day trip from Anaheim to go with the Ducks to all different locations in the southern part of the United States, and he packed for that, and he got traded to the Flyers before the first game of the trip.
Yeah.
I believe they were going somewhere in Canada, in Alberta, about 3 days later. And I'm going, does he have clothes? It does uproot. And for a guy like Scott Lawton, who hasn't been around, who's been around here a long, long time, obviously you're really embedded in the community, and it's a lot. You have others to consider, your wife, animals, kids, in a lot of cases, and it affects teammates because, the guys that you play this sport with are some of the closest people in your life, especially during that period of your life. And if one of them is going to be extracted from it, just imagine what it's like, your best friend at work or your best friend all of a sudden gets shipped halfway across the country to go work for someone else. So it does have an effect. There's no doubt about it. There's a human element to it. It's part of the deal. They know that, but it doesn't make it that it mitigates that it is a real effect it can have on a team and on particular players.
And we just saw it with Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. Yeah. I mean, Frosty gets back here and it's like, oh yeah, we left my car. my car's been here the whole time. I drove around. There's little logistical things like that. Yeah. You've got to have that. Usually your team figures that out for you, I think. But it's those little things that people don't really think of. That especially when it's a trade from here to Calgary or somewhere else, it's a great distance.
Yeah, there are two deadlines that really kind of stand out for me. The day that Wayne Simmons was dealt, because remember that deal was announced right before. Literally right before, right at about 2:58.
Mm-hmm. After the Stadium Series game.
Yeah, the day after the Stadium Series game. Yeah, and it really helped the guys actually being together that day. They obviously everybody's aware they're watching TV, but they're trying to keep it as light as they can, although everybody's nervous.
Yeah.
That never goes away from deadline to deadline because particularly if your name is out there as a guy who might be on the move. And I also remember with Michael Raffel, who did not get moved at that deadline, but he said that he couldn't stand sitting around at home.
Oh yeah,
he had to go out early in the morning and just take a long walk because he didn't want to look at his phone. He needed to get away.
I guess I can tell this story now because I think the corpse is cooled on it. But when Wayne was traded, his wife was 6 months pregnant, I think, something like that, well along with their first. He'd never been traded during the season before, right. And I'm sure your head's in a million different places because you're trying to figure out what your family's doing and all this stuff. So he gets traded, and why am I blanking on who he was traded to?
Nashville.
Yeah, he was traded to Nashville.
Yeah.
But yes, that's right. He was traded to Nashville. They were in St. Louis.
Right.
So they were playing the next night in St. Louis. He left Philadelphia without his equipment. I mean, these guys are they're just used to, I think, people taking care of this stuff. So yours truly got on a flight the next day. I ran a 900-mile errand. I went out to St. Louis with his bag. I dropped it off. I got back in the same Uber, came back, flew back here. It was, it's just one of those things that comes up every now and then.
Gonna need that.
Yeah. I mean, it's some frequent flyer miles, right? So
for sure.
I guess let's talk about the first trade that we know is official because the team has already announced it. We're seeing a lot of the same stuff everybody else is, right? Just kind of refreshing Twitter all day. But Andrei Kuzmenko goes to Los Angeles, and we certainly a guy that was pleasant while he was here. We enjoyed having him here. I mean, he was great. Whether he fit in the plans here, obviously probably didn't fit in the future plans because he's moved. But to get a third back from him, it seems like that's a pretty good look.
No, not for sure. And it's a very short term retention. I mean, the Flyers were able to probably bump it up around, certainly 1 round, maybe 2 rounds, maybe even getting a fifth. They get a third out of it. Draft pick is a lottery ticket, but you're getting an asset back. And, I think it was going to be hard regardless for Kuzmenko to fit in the plan because we'll be honest that his history is that he goes a place and he makes a splash right away. Did Vancouver, he did it in Calgary, and then it really is leveled off for him.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really enough runway left in the season for him to really make a case, unless he was just scoring at some insane kind of a pace. That being said, he played well. He played well, and the other night, really nice goal too, where he stole a puck from Kadri, went in and scored. So, I was joking about it on Twitter that it turned out that Andrei Kuzmenko's Flyers stint was shorter than Andrei Kovalenko's, but at least Kuzmenko actually had a couple highlights. So.
Yeah, he has 5 points in 7 games for the Flyers. He produced a little bit, and some people will go, well, why not keep him? He's a guy that kind of can do. But at this point in a rebuild, I think it's really important to kind of go, okay, we have to know what a guy's kind of traits are as a player. And when you see a really good start somewhere and then flattening off, I think we were all a little bit exhausted on this guy's got the ability to be a 22 to 26 a year goal scorer and 65-point guy, but it just doesn't happen for a litany of different reasons, whether it's injury or unfulfilled, the team, whatever it is. At this point, you got to have things that are more concrete. So I think with Kuzmenko, as soon as they acquired him, this is just a flip opportunity. You're getting the cap relief next year. So the retention this year, and you fill that slot, means nothing because you're going to regain the retention slot next year. To get a third out of it, I'm surprised. Now, a third in this situation is decent value. And you get the third, obviously, like Bill said, because you retain some of the money, make it a little easier on the LA cap situation. So you get the third and the sixth, and all said and done, the consequence of that move was what had initially happened with Calgary and what it provides you after the season, which is cap space. And if you kind of put all the pieces of this puzzle together, both, I think, from a hockey standpoint and from a fiscal standpoint, I think we're starting to see the direction and maybe a developing arc of a timeline of how this team plans to operate, which is really important because they have all of these assets, and you get another first-round pick today. What is it, at 27 from Toronto in the Lawton deal?
Yeah.
I mean, you have so much draft capital or equity that you can use as you make these steps. That 27 draft pick, they may hold on to it. That could be used next year to trade deadline to acquire a player in a Mikko Rantanen cat. You never know.
Right.
But having these first-round picks for NHL, they are gold bullion. They think these picks are like the greatest thing on earth, the Ark of the Covenant, right? Now, late first-round picks, you can only have so many in one draft because you can't have all these guys come up together and have to pay them all at the same time together, too. So you're starting to see some stagger here as well. To me, it's really laying out this blueprint of where this team wants to go. And I think the most fascinating part, and I'll just get off my soapbox after I say this, is when Daniel Briere, Keith Jones, Dan Hilferty, and they had that press conference. It was the introductory press conference at Wells Fargo Center. They laid out what they were going to do. They have not deterred from it at all. If you go back and watch that, there were times when a lot of people thought, and I'm not just talking fans, but experts thought they should accelerate in certain areas. When Mishkov comes over 2 years early, you got to find him in the center. Or when you're in contention last year, you can't subtract Sean Walker to get a first-round pick because you are in contention and making the playoffs could have a further benefit. They didn't. They stuck to it. And, at the time, it's hard going through it because the team is not as good as you want it to be in the moment. But in the big picture, they stuck to the exact plan that they decided they were going to. And the last part of this is this, and I think this is hugely important. A first-time GM cannot come into the league and get pushed around.
Yes.
If you do, you have told every GM that they can dictate value to you on your assets. Danny Briere has not let that happen. He played a very patient game, and that sets him up in the future. When I set my price, if you want a deal, you're going to have to meet it. And it's a really important. I know Brian Burke's talked about this quite a bit, and other longtime GMs. You cannot get pushed around in this league. And he made sure in his first couple of years making some really big deals with guys like Provorov, Hayes, Farabee, Fraud. We can list them off. He held his value firm, including Sean Walker, and then this year, in great case, with Scott Lawton.
Well, let me speculate my brains out here first before we move on to some of the other trades here. But the gathering of all this draft capital and everything that's going on, we've talked about the notion of offer sheets, right? And that being a weapon that's more used now in today's NHL than I think it has been in the past. With offer sheets, if you sign a guy, you've got draft picks usually going the other way as compensation. And I don't know the rule if it's got to be your draft pick. So you have your own picks that you can use for this. They're loading up on other picks that they could use for other things if I guess they want to go down that road, right? If they want to do some offer sheeting and they can use their picks for that and some of the other picks they have for drafting or packages.
There's so many ways you can take it, right? There's I think that there is going to be more and more offer sheets issued. I think there's been a major change in terms of, it was for a long time it was taboo or nearly taboo. That taboo is not there anymore. I mean,
thanks, Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, yeah, for real. Yeah, Army really. I mean, remember when the Flyers offer sheeted Shea Weber? It's not a secret. Homer himself has said. The other GM.
Thank God they matched that. By the way.
Yeah, yeah, because as good as Weber was at the time, that wouldn't have aged well.
No,
but the other GMs, like the other GM kind of shunned him after he did that.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be the case anymore. It's a legitimate way to bring in talent if you can put together an offer that that won't be matched. I mean, you're overpaying, obviously, but I think that's in play. You can also take those picks and you can package several picks to maybe move up in the draft. You talking earlier about staggering picks. You can move an asset, maybe kick that back a year, which is kind of what the Flyers did late in the first round last year. So there's so many different ways that they can take those assets, and you always want to have that flexibility, and you always, and you need to in this league, deal from a position of strength, because when you're dealing from a position of weakness, other teams will try to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And Jason brought up a great point where with the general manager, once you set a price, if you don't stick to it, if they can outweight you on it, and you're the first one to blink and you come way down in price, that's all you're ever going to deal with, because you're just going to outweigh them. I mean, it was the opposite effect was it was hard so many years dealing with Glenn Sather, because he would always ask for the sun, the moon, the stars, and it was with an understanding that he would come down a little, but not much. And I think the Flyers did a little bit of that too, where I think they set prices high, with an understanding that there are things that there are things that are negotiable and certain non-negotiables. With Scott Lawton, clearly the Flyers are willing to retain something on it, but the non-negotiables, they want the first round pick back,
right?
And they got it.
I guess let's go ahead and segue to that, because that has not been officially announced yet. But that's just probably semantics at this point, with all the trades coming into Central Registry and being approved and all that. But I guess let's get your thoughts on the return. Jay, I'll just start with you. It's that first round pick, and Bill apparently does know something about this guy coming over from the Marlies that I don't. But I think when it comes to what was out there, I think after it seems like after a few deals went down in the last couple of days, a lot of teams started circling back on lots, and that might have helped a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had a very interesting trade deadline kind of pool of players that became available, which I think, and it was ever changing. All of a sudden Marchand became available. No, he's not a center, but he's a high end winger, that has gone through the playoff grind and a cup winner. And you see Mikko Rantanen becomes available, and things have to play out in certain ways. And you see other centers go off the board. What was the deal going to be with Braden Shen? Was he an option? Because that was a player teams would look at Lawton and Shen, although different kinds of players, and how it played out. So as you had to read the market as it develops, and the market is ever changing. But Danny, I think, stuck to that first round pick. We heard a couple of years ago there was a first round pick offered for Lawton. And last year we didn't hear first round pick was offered for Lawton. And maybe with 1 year left on his deal beyond this year, that helps. It's the extra kick at the can. A team like the Leafs knows that they're an all-in for the Stanley Cup team this year, but they're also an all-in team for the Stanley Cup next year. It's not a one and done for them. Yeah. So having that extra year of Lawton, the extra kick at the can with him, I think is a big element. He'll fit in there beautifully. And it's a good deal to get the first round pick. And, some of the names that were mentioned were, okay, you have all these first round picks, and Toronto didn't have a first round pick in this draft. So you get a future first, or do you get a Fraser Minton type player from them? They end up getting the big Russian winger, and he's close. Like, he's almost there. And he's a big body, 6'2", and you need some size. You lack that up front on the wing. He's got a relationship with Mishkov. He is a goofy guy. He looks like he's got a ton of personality. So to kind of get what you got in this exchange for Lawton is very good. And it speaks to how Scott Lawton is regarded around the league. And we know it firsthand here. And the three of us in particular know it personally, the kind of guy that he is. I mean, I'm going to miss him dearly because he's one of the guys I've enjoyed covering in my 16 years more than any, because he's a salt of the earth, good person, a hell of a hockey player, a guy that if I was on any team and doing anything in life, I'd want him in that foxhole next to me. And I know those guys in the Flyers locker room feel the same way. And those guys in Toronto will feel that immediately as well. So you're losing a lot with Scott Lawton. Is he a top 6 player and a guy that puts up big? No, but there's more to sport and more to camaraderie in sport and more to culture than just stats. And he brings a lot of that. He will help the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll miss him dearly. I know you guys will as well. But all in all, it's one heck of a deal for a player in this situation that everybody knows his name was out there. It's a really nice piece of business that Danny Briere conducted here. And again, the patient game paid off against a general manager that is seasoned in Brad Treliving, with a lot of pressure on him. So it's a very impressive deal when you consider all that.
Your thoughts on the return? I know that we've got another Russian coming over that can help with Matvei Michkov, maybe. And we'll see where that goes. I don't know if that was part of the equation. I'm sure Danny might talk about that a little bit later on today. But they certainly appear to still be adding pieces that can help Matvei Michkov here as he continues to develop in North America.
Yeah, and in Grabenkin's case, you don't have to rush him. Right. Great tools, good size, good skill, good playmaker, good skater. And he had a breakthrough year in Russia a year ago, actually for a championship team. And, he's shown flashes with the Marlies, and he put in a few games with the Maple Leafs too. Is he a slam dunk? No, he's not a slam dunk, but it's a guy with a pretty good upside. Yeah. And, you can see how he comes along. The opportunity is there for him. And, whenever you can add a skilled winger with size, that's, that's a nice get. And we'll see. We will see how he develops, but that's, it's a nice player. I think that the floor to ceiling, right? Maybe the floor is a little lower because he's unproven. Minton is, I think, a safer bet to play in the NHL lineup sooner. But
but on the flip side of that, if he hits his ceiling, and I think his ceiling is he could be, he's a little bit more of a passer than a shooter, but as a guy who could get you 40 points, even 50 points, if he hits the mark, he's a good player, and that's that's a nice supporting piece. And as you're putting a puzzle together, and I mean the Flyers have been looking for some bigger wingers too. So,
how small are they on the wing? I mean,
well, the Flyers are very small on the wing.
Yeah,
and, that adds another piece to it. That's another piece to it too. Again, we'll see. He's an interesting prospect. I think that when they looked over the system, there were guys who were available. Like I don't think Cowan was actually available in this trade. But and he's another smaller guy too. But he has that chemistry with Denver Barkey, and that whole connection with the London Knights. But he was probably on the list of prospects that they were willing to make available in the right trade, and so it's another guy with some upside in the system. So that's the other piece of it too. Besides the first round pick, just to reiterate, what Jason said, and actually. Brian and I remember Scotty's first day of his first development camp because we interviewed him.
Yeah,
and he'd just been through the draft, which was in Pittsburgh, and not that it was against Scotty, but because it was the Flyers pick, he got booed. When he was he took it in stride. I think that one of the things that people who don't know Scott don't realize about him is that he actually has a really good dry sense of humor. Like Scott has such a good game face, and he's so intense on the ice.
And then they'll just say something you can't repeat on the screen.
Yes, yes, no, and just always ask about how your family's doing, and just he's just such a good guy, and I'm gonna miss him tremendously. We all are, as Jason said. I cannot bring myself to ever root for the Maple Leafs in the playoffs, but if they were to actually get to a cup final for the first time since they won it in '67, I'll be happy for Scotty.
Yeah, so. I mean it harkens a little bit back to when Chemo left and went to Chicago,
right.
and hit the jackpot there, able to get that one. So obviously that was Chemo's kind of swan song. He knew he was going to be done, and let's get it here. I think Lott still has some tread on the tires, but
he's got another contract in him after this.
There's no question.
Because he does the little things right. There was a guy in the comments here. I'm not even going to put it on the screen. And said any player can be a good penalty killer. Well, then why aren't they?
And if you look at the entire NHL the last 3 years, guess what? Scott Laughton leads the NHL in shorthanded points over the last 3 years. So that's a darn good penalty killer.
Yeah.
I mean, he adds so much to a team and a contending team.
It's little things.
Can play left wing. No, he's not ideally a regular top six center, but you can move him up occasionally as you need to. We talked about the penalty kill part of it. He instantly improves any room he's in.
Yes.
There's all of that, and every teammate knows that he has their back, and whatever they might need off the ice as well as on the ice. I mean, he's there for them. It's gonna it leaves a hole in the room. I mean, it does, and that's going to take time as you're for new leaders to emerge. And I mean, listen, two guys who are really well liked in the room were just moved too, so it's a different room. There's an effect because these guys are not machines; they're humans, and these are good friends, and in Lawton's case, a leader. That will take time. That will take time to figure things out and to move forward with. But but in the bigger picture of the organization, it makes sense. It's a good deal for Scott going to a contending team. So I mean, ultimately, this is one of those potentially a win-win. So that's the best you could hope for.
And not that
Ontario kid too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not that it enters into anything. There's a reason why Danny would make the trade or anything, but he does get to go home now. He's from Oakville, which is just south of Toronto. They just had their first boy Reed, and I know Chloe gone through some tragedy of late with the loss of her father. So, that's another comfort level, I think, for those of us that know him, is that they're going to be closer to home here for at least the first few years of Reed's life. We'll see where the contracts take him after that, but that's a benefit too.
Let me add this real quick too, because I think we're seeing this around the league. Like, I'm seeing all these deals go down leading up to the deadline and through today, and it seems like to me that there is a lot of value, intangible value, being moved because of how difficult it is to win the cup. Like, it is so hard to win it and grind through those 4 rounds. I mean, you see intangible value with a guy like Luke Schenn, I think, is a great example of that, who is not at his peak playing performance days. He got moved twice to Pittsburgh and then out of Pittsburgh, but he's a guy that brings an intangible, very important value to a team trying to win a cup. Because of that leadership and all of those other things to it, a lot of respect and depth. And you see Marchand's getting moved to Florida, Marchand, Bennett, and Kachuk on the same team. Like, you're seeing the intangible value of some players being accentuated at this deadline. That's not by mistake in a 32-team league where it's really difficult to win. A lot of teams feel like they got a chance. And I'll go back to something Berkey always says. They're only going to give out 1 cup.
Yeah.
But there's about 19 teams that think they can get it.
And in Florida's case, or any team that's won the Cup's case, the only thing harder than winning a cup is defending it, because every team, all 82 games of the regular season, they have you circled. You're playing the champs, and that's so everybody's up to play you, and I mean, credit to Bill Zito, he's going for it again. And
how fun is that team going to be to watch?
Oh yeah,
my goodness.
Yeah, between the whistles and after the whistles too. Yeah.
That's a 10-ring circus. That is trapeze artists, sword swallowers, you name it, they got it all.
So we don't have these things official. We're just, again, kind of following the same things that you folks are following as they come through on the internet. But it does look like
4:30. Is that what we're hearing?
That's what we're hearing. Yeah. That's subject to change. I don't know if we're going to make it till 4:30, but if we do hop off early, we'll certainly have Danny right here on these same platforms live for you when he does come around to talk. We're also hearing that Eric Johnson might be headed back home to Colorado, making this officially the worst day of my life. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself now at this point, losing all my fun. If
Danny gets a first-round pick for Eric Johnson going back to college, that'd be something.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
I don't know what he got.
If he did.
Somebody suggested maybe we got Kale McCarr for it. I don't think that happened either.
Yeah. Well, BJ was a number 1 overall pick, so good.
Yeah, he was. It's funny how all of us in the day-to-day here, we get so wrapped up in the Flyers, right? Yeah. We're constantly following the Flyers. We're concentrating on this team. And I remember last year when we got EJ from Buffalo, I'm like, what? He's in Buffalo? I missed that completely. I just had not realized that.
He took an ad that he was in Buffalo and he wanted to leave, Smitty.
Yeah. Well, he'd been in Colorado for so long.
Yeah.
The less said about the Sabres, the better. But no, I mean, I had the opportunity in 2006. I covered the World Junior Championships in Sweden for NHL.com, and I was so impressed by Eric Johnson back then as an 18-year-old. Everybody knows how he is. I mean, bright, articulate, and he was just a top prospect. I'm glad he got to play his 1,000th game in a Flyers uniform.
Yeah,
it would have happened sooner if not for injuries along the way. But getting that milestone, it's always such an honor, particularly for a guy whose role changed during his career. He was always a power play regular early in his career, and he had to change his game.
Yeah,
and that's such a key to longevity in the league, or finding the right role for you. I've talked to Elon Perrier about it because Lappy played 1,000 games in the league. If Lappy had tried to be a scorer like he was in junior, Lappy wouldn't play 200 games in the NHL. He understood that he had to change what his role would be. And Erik Johnson's another perfect case of that, because he went from a guy who would kill penalties, block shots, those kind of things, from being a 22-minute or more a night defenseman. And I mean, just a really good guy to talk to, a good spokesman for the game. He'll have a long career in broadcasting or whatever he wants to do.
Yep.
Honestly,
I mean, he's the most interesting man in hockey. I think is what we found out after he got here, and I was doing his 1000th game kind of. I forget what you wrote. I wrote a little bit of a feature kind of on what got him to that point, and I start kind of looking into it a little bit, and he's owned over 100 racehorses in his life. Yes. He's got his toes dipped in all these various things. He named those horses after a bunch of his teammates in Colorado. So there was so much out there that I didn't really know about him. I guess it's a decent time to chat a little bit about the game preview things, because that really started kind of organically. Excuse me. He was the 7th defenseman for what, Jay, 2 months, something like that. And so he was always out after practice anyway, but then the Flyers started to carry 3 goalies, and they needed to work out Alexei Kolosov. So he'd always be out there shooting. And that's around the time when our video crew, John, Ryan, Angelo, whoever was here, and myself, and Brendan as well, would go out there and record these videos. And he just started kind of screwing around. He started being himself. Started skating by, whatever, and then we get to Pittsburgh, I think it was, where he rode the stick past us, and it kind of became a thing. I was like, all right, well, let's keep this going. Like, he wanted to keep it going, which we did there certainly for a good month, and then he got back in the lineup, and then all of a sudden the logistics changed. He's not out as late anymore, right? It's not by the time we're out there to record the preview, he's changed and headed out. So that's kind of why they started to fade away there. But we're going to have to get one more thing in here somehow. We got to put a cap on this. We can't just let it kind of fade into nothing.
Yeah, definitely like a montage.
Yeah. Oh, there will be a montage. That might be his going away video, to be honest with you. We were saving that for the end of the season.
Now, does Toronto come back into Philly this year? I'm looking at their schedule
now.
We
are there at the end of this upcoming road trip, which is
on the 25th.
Yeah, 2 weeks or so.
So Lutton's return will not happen this year.
I don't think they come back this year.
Yeah, they do not. And Colorado, obviously, we've already seen them twice. So, and LA, that's done with LA as well. So we won't see any returns this year. Not that you'd have some big tribute for Kuzmenko after 7 games.
Somebody on Twitter has already risen a banner for Luke Shen in Pittsburgh.
No,
I love those things.
Yeah. I mean, look, there was a lot of other names out there too for Flyer players that I was a little surprised to see. New Jersey was looking for centers with Jack Hughes going down. Yeah. Ryan Paling's name, they ended up trading for Cody Glass. But his name was out there. And, names get out there. This is also another thing going back to the general manager, that Danny Briere was willing to look at everything. If you can get value beyond what the player provides, you have to look at it. So I know Zamula's name may have been out there. Flyers have a bit of a logjam right now defensively. We'll see how that plays out with Emil Andre with the Phantoms right now. There's a couple of log jams. The recent development of a guy like Jamie Drysdale, who I think looks like a totally different hockey player, because you remove the biggest impediment to succeeding, the brain and thinking, and just reacting. You're starting to see the Brad Shaw effect on Jamie Drysdale. Yeah. So, let's not kind of avoid the big, the big thing here too. They still need a 1C. Now, how do you go about getting it? There's a lot of ways to go about getting it. It's not an easy thing to get, because teams that have one don't tend to make them available.
Right.
But you have a lot of equity and a lot of ways to do it. You can either do it in the hockey trade. You can do it in free agency. Look, I don't think Jack Eichel is going to get to free agency. I think he's going to stay in Vegas. Yeah. But, you look at it, Bill and I have talked about it. You look at McDavid. Does he dip his toe in free agency? That's a little different, I think. Vegas is a team that's a cup contender every year. Great place to live. No taxes, all of that.
Edmonton is not.
Does McDavid want to stay in Edmonton? A team like the Flyers could offer McDavid a 7-year contract, max contract. that would basically be the same money because of the tax and exchange rate and the amount of money you make from being on the East Coast and being in a major North and U.S. city. So there, you got to look at all of those things. You can go about it that way. The offer sheet, I think, is going to be something that's going to be available where you can really squeeze teams. Wyatt Johnson was a name that perhaps was on that list. He just extended, so he's now off the list of offer sheet candidates, but there are others. So you can go out there and find it. And I think we're going to find at NHL that now I think the old general manager days are kind of over, where it's all the old group, same guys, same guard, and they kind of had these unspoken rules a little bit to some degree that they didn't want to step out of. You see general managers younger now and turning over more than ever.
Yeah.
And I think that plays into it. It's either you got to win or put yourself on a path, or they're going to move on. So the 20, 30-year-old term general managers is not a thing, the security you're going to have going forward. So I think they're going to be more aggressive overall. And that's going to create a lot of movement. Now, the other part of that is this salary cap is going to be bananas, guys.
Yeah.
The projections over the next 3 years are going to make some teams in certain markets very uncomfortable because of where the floor is. Now, the Flyers are a team that's not going to make them uncomfortable. And all the things they're doing here with a new building coming and all the renovations to the practice center and everything else, they're going to be in a situation where they're not going to be uncomfortable by those numbers or daunted by them in this market. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out for a 1C. And Jonesy has said it several times. You don't go out and get the best available. You go out and get the best.
The best, yeah.
Which is such an Ed Snyder thing to say.
And I understand the quest for parity, right? That's what Gary Bettman has been doing for years and years, and that's why there's a salary cap now. And you don't want to leave 10 teams in the dust like was the case in the 80s, right? You don't want to just let some teams blow everybody else out of the water. But the fact that this cap is going to raise like it is, to me, it almost feels like the Flyers are going to have a little bit of an advantage like they did in the 80s and 90s when Mr. Snyder was always ready to open that checkbook to bring in whoever. And we even saw it. Like, I remember when the Shea Weber deal went down, when the offer sheet went down, and I just remember kind of smiling and being like, yeah, that's Flyers hockey right there. Everything you can do to make yourself better, you're going to do it.
They offered him more money than the franchise was worth.
I had a buddy working there
Yeah.
at the time in broadcasting that all of a sudden had to start selling concert tickets because they needed to raise the money to pay that offer sheet. But I just feel that edge coming a little bit with this cap increase as quick as it is, that hopefully it goes back to giving maybe some of the teams like the Flyers a little bit.
It'll be an advantage for teams on the Northeast corridor and Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston. It'll be an advantage. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, so we'll see where it goes. And again, the one other thing you were talking about the offer sheets and stuff, and I'm wondering, do you guys think that's a trend that is why we're seeing so many guys sign their next deal the year before the current one's up?
Yeah, teams try to preempt that.
Yeah,
and it's going to be an ever increasing important part of doing business because if you walk the guy into free agency, you might be walking him out of town
For nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that
I think the bit of business that Jim Nill did with getting Mikko Rantanen and signing him to that extension and the Wyatt Johnson part of it was just as important. They're the team to look out for now in the West. Carolina, Bill, if you can explain this one to me, I just don't understand how they conducted themselves through this whole Mikko Rantanen thing from the original. I know Nate just wanted out. Yeah. And they end up with a couple of first-round picks in this. But for a team that seems like they needed to make the step from conference finalists to getting to a cup with Rob Brindamore and Aho and the pieces they have, I do not understand how they conducted themselves from a general manager standpoint this season with a new GM, a young GM.
Yeah. I mean, he took a calculated risk, I guess, figuring that they could get Rantanen to extend.
You can make the deal without having no one going to.
Exactly. You have to have your ducks in a row there. You can't. It can't be guesswork.
No.
Because you walk away potentially looking really foolish, and you're, Nate just wanted out, but that's a heck of a player you traded to get Rantanen. And and so you get a diminishing return when you have to move him again. And I thought Jim Nill, who's an outstanding general manager, I thought Jim played it perfectly. He played his cards right, and one of the holdups on the trade to the last part of it, according to all reports, was that he wanted to make sure he get the extension, get the extension done, and then we'll do the deal.
Yeah, that was
hung up.
I'm interested to see the 30 on 30 on how that all came through, because it looked like this morning that it wasn't going to happen, and then people were thinking, okay, this guy really wants too much money, and there's 3 teams that aren't willing to give it to him, and then it finally does. So it'd be interesting to see what that number is.
Again, here's the advantage: Dallas is also a no tax income tax state. For people, I think the NHL is going to need to address it at some point. Where they address that there's no income tax states like Dallas, Florida, Vegas, and the advantage it gives them, and also the Canadian exchange rate, because and the Canadian dollar, like it's a real issue. And in this rising cap world where money's going to get thrown around like jujubes, you're going to see the effect of it, because what the player looks at is dollars in my pocket, not what's on paper.
Yeah,
I can sign for $8 million here, and that equals $9.5 million if I'm playing in LA, or if I'm playing in Montreal, or I'm playing here. So it's, what am I bringing home? There's a couple general managers I think you look at and you go, okay, these are guys I'd like to see a young GM and Danny Briere pick up elements of how they do business. Jim Nill's one of them. Look at the draft and development of players there. I mean, it is really remarkable. And then you look at another guy, Bill mentioned him earlier, is Bill Zito, who uses every lever available to him to build his team. And then I look at a guy like Kelly McCrimmon in Vegas. I mean, look at since they've come into the league, their history of first round picks. I think they've used one on a player that's actually played there. You're looking at like 9 years now. When you get in that window, you got to use that stuff. And those are general managers that they show a lot of cool, like a lot of
moxie.
A lot of moxie and a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
And in this kind of salary cap league today, I think you got to have those things. And I know Jonesy talked about this too when he did a show with Anthony Gargano. You're not far from looking at a guy like Howie Roseman, who uses every lever to build his team in very creative ways. That's what it's going to take to be great. And you got to use all of those different levers and be able to have the guts and conviction, and also obviously the eye for talent and the development and the structure and culture and all the stuff in place to win in a 32 team league. It's hard to win. But what the Flyers do with these picks, whether they use them, trade them, and how they use them going forward and how they develop them, we'll see where this goes. But I think we're starting to see, again, the arc of where they're taking this entire thing now that the evaluation and subtraction stage, I believe, has officially ended.
And one of the other key things too is that with the cap dollars being available, as you have players that are reaching second bridge contracts where you have to make that decision of how long we extend them for. Because when you go short term, all of a sudden you end up, walking the guy into unrestricted free agency if he's part of your long term plan. But what you're going to have is inflation of contracts. Now you're going to have defensemen that are making $6 to $7 million, and no one's going to bat an eye at it, because it's going to be a nice deal, but it's not going to be something that cripples somebody on the cap. But you hand out 3 or 4 of those, then all of a sudden you're kind of back where you started. So you have to be very methodical and very smart as to how you handle it.
Yeah, and again, you look at the overall situation, and there was some talk about Lawton. We're talking to Toronto about Lawton, who's coming back. I know Fraser Minton had been bandied about. Interestingly enough, he's going to Boston. It looked like Brandon Carlo is headed to Toronto. So
fire sale in Boston, boys. I would have never thought that this year.
No,
crazy.
But Toronto's loading up, and I don't know if they need a live chicken to break the curse here or whatever they need, but they're going at it. And we've talked about this, Jason. You and I have talked about it extensively on the radio broadcasts about how top heavy that team is.
Yes.
That's what a guy like Lawton does. It comes in there and shores up that back end.
Which is why you need Easton Cowan.
Yeah.
Because you need to start bringing guys in that contribute on entry-level contracts. They have some big decisions to make. They have Marner coming up, obviously. Marner. And they have also John Tavares.
Yeah.
Where does that team go? They're loading up with this offensive core that they have right now. Obviously, Matthews is great, and they have some big pieces up there, but they just haven't been able to get over the hump other than winning the one first-round matchup. Goaltending, can it hold up for them? Does Stolarz come back and Wall? There's some questions there. Back end, did they go and get Carlo? But boy, I mean, look at these conferences and who's coming out of the East? Who's coming out of the West? I have no idea.
No.
A lot of it's going to depend on,
who's
got it going right when it all starts.
Yeah, and how quickly do these new guys gel into these teams? Jason,
Yeah.
you talked about that with Torts today. There is a brand new Hockey and Hounds out today, by the way, if you want to check it out after we're done here. But you talked about it, about the risk of putting somebody in a room that's already pretty close, and sometimes it backfires on you.
Yeah, because sometimes that guy comes in and takes the job of someone that's really done the job for you all year to put you in this position.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to just and look, this is late in the ball game. We're at March 7th. Most teams are around that 18 to 22 games left in the season. There's not a lot of runway. And sometimes, it just doesn't work out. I mean, not sometimes, most times. Bill, when's the last
World Cup, right?
Yeah, I mean, big, huge ads at the deadline that it's paid off. I mean, you don't look back a lot of years and see that is the case.
In that season, right?
Right. And that's the thing.
Yeah. It's like when Colorado got Ray Bourque. It didn't pay off that year, but it paid off the next year.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Almost came here.
The rental.
Very nearly.
So close.
Nearly.
But that's just it. I think you look at these situations that some of these other teams are doing, and if they don't work out this year, it's not like you kind of really swung and missed unless you did blow up your franchise for it. And I think, Jay, you and I were talking about this before we went on the air here, that Florida did not win the year they got Claude Giroux, but they got to the finals next year and won the year after that. Right. And G wasn't a part of that, but again, they didn't blow up their core to get him, and so you take a swing at it. That's all fine and good. Odds are you're going to miss because, again, one cup, 32 teams. But if you, again, are looking at the long term at the same time, and then you might have luck down the road.
For sure. And it's a lot of times it's smaller moves too that, the right player for the right role. And that's why I think Lots is such a valuable piece going to Toronto because he checks a lot of boxes for what a contender needs going to playoff series as a supporting cast guy. I think that it's a lot of those little details in the game. Maybe it's another PK guy, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's maybe you need a little more size, a little more physicality, whatever. It's not always just adding the big flashy guy, the big goal scorer that can end up making the difference in a close series. So a lot of times the smaller moves bear watching once you hit the postseason.
And let me again speculate my brains out one more time. But Jay and I, we've talked about that team being top heavy, right? And there's only one puck on the ice, and I have no evidence that there's any sort of discord in that locker room. None. I'm spitting into the wind here. But if there is, a guy like Scott Lawton's going to be the one that comes in and goes a long way to fix it.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure. There's going to be a period of time where he's going to have to integrate, and he's not going to come in there, and take over that role immediately. That'll grow as they go into the playoffs. That's when a guy like Scott Lawton will really start to show his colors. And a general manager and the deals he makes, he works with his coach a ton because the coach is in there day to day with his fingers in the meatloaf, in the ground meat, right? And a guy that won a cup in 2019, and we know very well, Craig Berube, knows how difficult it is to win that cup.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the luck you need along the way, a save here. I mean, go back to the Holtby save in the year that the Capitals won the cup. That save won them the cup. I believe that. It got them out of the first round, past Pittsburgh. You need those things. And, if Scott Lawton comes in and just wins them a draw that wins them a game 5 in a critical playoff series, it's worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's how minute it can be in the playoffs. And I think Brad Treliving, along with his head coach and Craig Berube, who knows Scott Lawton very well, was a big part of that acquisition also. And I think Berube probably also said we need more D depth and we need to be better on the blue line, which is why they go out and they get Carlo, a coach that won a cup recently in 2019. He knows what it takes and how hard it is, and he's trying to work with his GM to tee up the best opportunity for a team that's got a lot of great players on it. They really do. And while there'd be a lot of people in this hockey universe of ours that would hate seeing the Leafs win it, ultimately it'd be really good for the league and rising revenues. There's no doubt about that because they are polarizing.
Well, the bulletin from Voorhees, apparently official. Flyers acquire Nikita Grabenkin, 2027 first-round pick from Toronto for Scott Lawton, and a 4th and a 6th going back it doesn't say here in the headline when it is, but 2025 and 2027, there it is. So, again, it's a sad day to see him go. I think for him personally, if I had to speculate, there's going to be some relief, maybe once you get over having to leave the group, having to leave the city. He's been going through this now for I think 4 or 5 years. Every deadline, every time the draft rolls along,
right up to when he extended that contract, contract that he's on.
Yep.
That came down at the last minute.
Maybe a little bit of relief there that he doesn't have to wear that weight on his shoulders anymore. And who knows what'll happen next year when the contract's expiring. But that'll be a different animal, I think, when that happens. But it's going to be different not having him in that fourth stall from the end on the right in the locker room anymore over Voorhees, and not seeing him again in the tunnle. With some of the footage that we see that doesn't make air, it's pretty remarkable. We do have
the other thing real quick with Scotty. I just want to mention this is when Torts came here, nobody had a letter. He gave one guy an A, one guy, and that was Scott Lawton. And a lot of people thought that that would lead to him being the next captain of the Flyers. That was not the case, obviously, but. It's a big element. He's a guy that helps integrate young players, integrate new guys right away. And Danny's going to, by the way, speak at 4:15 about the deals today and went down around the league. We'll jump off probably right before that to give people the opportunity to watch the general manager. But yeah, I think for Scott, there's probably a lot of sadness and a lot of that going through him in memories because he always said he wanted to be a part of it here.
Yeah,
and it was important to him. Like he was a guy. I want to be part of this because he knows what it would be like to win here because he's been here long enough. So there's probably that part of it, but there's probably also a part of excitement. Hey, I'm going to the playoffs and I got a real chance on a team that I grew up an hour from, an iconic franchise that's pushing all in. So I think there's those elements too. So best to Scott Lawton. I'll be rooting for him and see how it goes for that team. But it was time. It was time to move on, and Danny got a hell of a return for him as well. So good on Danny, and we'll hear what he has to say coming up in just a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to try to take this little shindig right into Danny here in about 10 minutes time or so. He is talking from Voorhees. None of us are in Voorhees, but we'll see if we can't make this segue work. We've talked about this before. Guys that have blossomed after other folks have left, namely Travis Sanheim into the void left by Ivan Provorov. Who benefits now here from this opportunity to jump into that center spot, you think, in the organization?
In the real short term,
yeah.
Right? I think Abels comes back up because he played well during his opportunity to play earlier. It was just a really kind of a numbers game. So I think short term, he'll play. He'll see time in the middle. You might have an opportunity to take a little bit of a look at Peltier, more minutes on the wing.
Yeah.
Maybe bump him up a line, that kind of thing. I mean, he was a first round pick himself. He's we'll see. I mean, I really liked him when he was with Calgary. He was always around the puck. He a great hustle guy. He said he had some good moments so far, but really not getting a lot of opportunity to play. So I'd like to see, with Kuzmenko moved, there's opportunities for guys on the wing to see some time. Whether it's Grabankin or whether it's we'll see. I mean, and Danny will address, I'm sure, as to whether he'll come directly up to the NHL team and how they'll manage a lot of that. Maybe it's another kick at the can for Ola Leaksell, because it's kind of now or never for him. Just in terms of NHL. So
what about a guy like Tumala or Denoye, Bill, coming up and getting a taste? Denoye's got NHL taste already, but
yeah, I know.
it's really
think
going sideways for him.
That's exactly it, right? Denoye had that really good rookie year, and of course he goes way back with Lappy, done pretty much all his life. It's gone backwards for him, as you said. Not really sure why, because he actually outscored Tyson Forster in terms of goals that rookie year. He led the Phams in goals, and he seemed to be knocking in the door the NHL roster, and it kind of went backwards with him. I don't know if they're thrilled with the year that Tuomalas had. He can skate, he can shoot, he can score, but I think they want to see him hit another level of consistency. But he's had some injury issues too. And compete. Game in and game out, right?
Yeah.
You want that's one of the biggest things that a player can provide, is that the going in, and I don't mean the consistency of points, but I do mean the consistency of going in, competing night in and night out, so you know what you're going to get from the kid, in a given game. I don't think he's there yet. Now last year he definitely took a jump in his development, and you saw more of his skill, more of his speed coming back over to North America. But there's opportunity. There'll be jobs. They'll be there to be won. There'll be minutes for extended minutes for players. Maybe maybe with Lawton moving, maybe Paling moves up. Paling himself is 25, 26.
Yeah.
So, sorry to see guys go, but that does mean chances for other players. I mean, the Flyers will be looking this offseason and moving forward to certainly to improve their depth down the middle. They've traded a couple centers recently, and they've mostly gotten wingers back in return. And yes, they're working towards that big move for that 1C. And again, reiterating that the hardest holes to fill are a 1C and a number one defenseman. Teams don't trade them.
One RD.
Especially if he's a right-handed shooter.
Yeah.
So you have to draft them and develop them in most cases.
Yep.
But as they're working toward trying to improve down the middle, trying to get deeper, try to diversify your skill set. That's a big part of it too. Building a winning team. What I always liked about the Detroit Red Wings particularly was that they had lines that could beat you no matter what style you played. If you're a big physical pounding team, but not necessarily the fastest team, they had guys who could skate, right? If you were a smaller finesse team, well, they had big physical guys too. Whatever way you would play, they had guys who could match up against them, and that's ultimately where you want to get to.
You can't tell me anybody thought that team would sweep the Flyers in '97.
No, no, and
that's exactly what you're talking about. They were able to adapt and handle that,
and they won back-to-back cups, of course, after coming close before. Remember they set a regular season point record the year before year before that, and then the year before that, they were swept by the Devils in the finals. So that's also a case of a team knocking in the door a few times and then finally they get over the hump. But that's I think you want to have that mixture of players of different abilities and I think that's the key incidentally too to having a successful line. You have one guy who's good going and getting the puck. You have your distributor, you have your shooter, right? Everybody in a successful line has different kind of elements that they can bring to the success of that line. I think we're seeing that a little bit to an extent with the Noah Cates line, where each guy brings his own thing to it, but they're always so connected from shift in and shift out, and that's one of the things the Flyers wanted to do going into the season was last year they were overly reliant on transition games, scoring off the rush. And I mean, the Flyers were leading the league in goals off the rush for a lot of the year, but when they had to grind out a goal and cycle the puck a little bit, wear the other team down, they couldn't do it. And there's certainly still improvements there are to go there, but I think the Cates line is the one line that they can do that pretty consistently. They can win multiple battles in one shift, and even if they're, and it's something that Jason and I talked about, that even if they don't score, and maybe sometimes they don't even get a scoring chance, but they're wearing other teams down, and you're putting the next line out in a good position to do something because they're starting the offensive zone. You're putting the puck in there where they have to go 200 feet, and so if you have to change lines, you're set up. I mean, just a lot of the little kind of details. When you have different players who can provide different elements, and the Flyers certainly still need more size, as we touched on earlier. But but ultimately, I think that's where you want to get to. You want to have that mix on the roster, and that still is a work in progress. But you can see some steps being taken, in those areas.
I think they have attacked some of the redundancy, Bill.
Yeah.
Going back to the Frost Farabee move and now at the deadline as well. You can't have redundancy because you have to have guys for those specific roles, and things have to slot. When you look at the center position, based on how you do this, slotting is so important in roster building and team sports. It's incredible. And I'll go back to the off season heading into the 2019-20. Some of the moves they made, you get Hayes with Nolan Patrick unable to go to come in at the center position. You get Tyler Pitlick and Matt Niskanen. Niskanen, nice player. He wasn't Bobby Orr, but you look at how it's slotted, everything, and why that team was good is because they didn't have redundancy in their roster, in particular off the top pair and off the and down in your lineup at the forward position. So having that redundancy is not a good thing. So, Lawton, Paling, and guys that you can kind of move around and move up and move back. There was a little bit of redundancy there. Both guys can kill penalties, although I think one's better at it than the other. Lawton was a little better at it than Paling, but it was a bit redundant. And you were a bit redundant on the right side with your wingers too, and undersized wingers with Farabee and Brink and some of the smallish wingers too. So you got to have that right mix, and redundancy is not a thing that you strive for.
We are standing by here for Flyers General Manager Daniel Briere, who we are expecting to address the media really at any moment now. We're going to bring it to you here on this stream. We'll have a separate one going for you as well if you want to watch it later. But again, it's a interesting day here around the Flyers as the trade deadline comes and goes. And for Danny, I'm sure it's a stressful day. That's nice for him to get to the end of it. I can only imagine what it's like to be a general manager in this situation when your phones are ringing off the hook and you're constantly trying to stare at a board and figure out, okay, what's this look like now, but what's it look like 3 years down the road, that sort of thing. I mean, it's a lot more complicated, isn't it, than just trading a guy here on this day, to beat a deadline.
Yeah, and another big thing that general manager are doing is moves that you're not making today, but you're trying to set the table for the offseason, particularly. I mean, when teams convene for the draft, that's always a lot of times, where there's a ton of trade discussions that go on then after the season. Well, a lot of that groundwork sometimes gets laid right before the deadline. Teams it'll go quiet after the deadline, and then the general managers of the teams that are making the playoffs, they hope they made the right moves. They hope they strengthen their teams. Mm-hmm. All they can do at that point is just sit and wait and figure it out in the off season. But that's something else that's gone on too. There were discussions up to the deadline that are not designed to happen now, but are designed to be revisited this summer.
Sure,
that was the Provorov deal.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what happened.
That was all the groundwork on that was done before the deadline, and then it happened in the playoffs, early in the playoffs, which was it was right at the Stanley Cup final, Bill, like right as it started.
Yeah.
which is almost
I know
a
it was in
no-no.
the month of May. That's the only thing I remember for
It
sure.
Yeah,
was-
it's almost one of those no-nos. Don't do a deal when we're trying to launch our final, but you got the deal, you got the deal. So
yeah, and I mean, one of the trade deadline's a misnomer because it's really a playoff eligibility deadline. Teams can make trades tomorrow.
That's true. Yes.
but if your team that's heading for the playoffs, the guy wouldn't be eligible for postseason play. So and also today you also see moves, NHL AHL moves, because today is also the what they call clear day.
Yep.
Eligibility for the Calder Cup playoffs is also the same day as the NHL trade deadline. So you're moving guys down, and then you have your, was it 4 call-ups you're allowed?
I thought it was 4. Somebody said 5 today. I don't know if it's changed, but yeah,
unless there's emergency conditions.
Yeah, emergency. Yeah, and it's ow, my finger hurts. Emergency,
right.
Stuff like that. But we don't talk about that.
Emergencies have varying degrees.
Again, waiting on Flyers general manager Daniel Briere to join the stream here any moment, addressing the media. Jason, how you doing? Let's. I know we've got a lot of well wishers in the comments, and you've been fighting a good fight here. How's it going at this point?
Yeah, the fight's been one hell of a fight. I'll tell you that. Every recovery from every chemo treatment, which is every other week, my next one will be next Thursday, has been vastly different.
I guess we'll hold that thought. Maybe we'll get on the other end of this as Danny was just sat down at the podium.
Wait, interrupt me, Danny.
You're great timing. We'll bring in now Flyers general manager Daniel Briere.
I'm trying to find it. I do not see it yet. Well, we'll just, I guess, shoot people to the Flyers, to the YouTube page.
Okay, yeah, I was just saying we have. I know I've got a link here. I don't know how to get it into the stream here.
How do you have that link?
It's in your text message chain that we've been talking on. Okay. There's a thumbnail there.
Okay, I see it.
Of Owen Tippett. I think it is.
Okay. Let me get this up now.
It was tough to let him go. It was amazing, and on top of it, giving him the chance to go play for his hometown team, I think is pretty cool.
You told us a year ago that part of the reason you held on to him obviously was because you valued him for the culture, the culture setting aspect of it. What's your concern level with that now that you've taken him on top of, I guess, the prior move with Calder?
Yeah, there's no doubt that it's it's a little scary. He was a big part of the culture, that we've I think been reestablishing the last couple of years. He was a big part of that. But at some point too, you got to let some of the young guys start to take over. We thank Scott for everything that he's done, and hopefully, he leaves, a print on our locker room, and you see some of the young guys taking a step this year. When you think about Noah Cates, Owen Tippett, Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink have all elevated their play, and you hope that they can use what they've learned from Scott.
What was it important to get you have 3 firsts in this coming draft? Was it important for you that the first round pick that you acquired was in a later year? I mean,
It was preferable, at some point too, because that there's no guarantee that first round pick we will be picking at some point. We hope to be one of those teams on the other side of the fence that are looking to acquire players. Like you mentioned, having 3 already this year, still our own next year. We felt, for us, that wasn't a problem to push it out that way. Those first round picks you saw today, you see at the on draft day, they're so valuable. It to me doesn't really matter. Even if it's pushed out a year or 2, they're still very valuable and a huge asset to have moving forward. So, we're excited to be able to move it out a little bit.
What was the conversation, I guess, like with Scott Martin?
Emotional, from both sides. I mean, me personally, I played with Scott. I know him really well. He was a teammate for when he started in the league. So yeah, it was emotional for him, probably even more. Leaving everything he knows behind as far as the NHL, the only team he's ever played for. This is his family. So it was definitely tough. I think he had a lot of different emotions all at once. You could tell, there's one side that you feel you're losing something, and on the flip side, it's the opportunity is exciting for him. So um, it was a weird moment there for a few minutes.
Well, it hasn't been officially announced, but
Eric Johnson,
yeah, another one of your former teammates.
another teammate. If trading all the teammates away today, but yeah, in Eric's case, it's more of a favor to him to give him a chance to go chase a cup in a place that he played a lot of years, that he still has lots of friends. So it's not something that we were really looking forward to do. It was more for him to give him the chance to chase it one more time, or maybe more.
The return with Javon Smith.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
What can you tell us about the prospect you're getting from Toronto? Why was he someone that you were actively targeting, or how that all kind of?
Yes, he was. He was one of their prospect that we really liked. And when you're talking trades with other teams, I'm not. It's not just by myself. We rely on our team of scouts, guys that travel rinks and watch these players play. And our guys were really high on him. Got excited when his name started, being mentioned as a possibility. So yeah, he was definitely a target for us. They valued him more than a 3rd round pick. So that's how this one got done.
He's going to go to the AHL. You said on the way to start.
Yeah, to start with, that's the plan. No, but I don't know how soon he's going to play, but we certainly see him as a future Flyer.
Without getting into specifics, did you get many phone calls for other players that maybe weren't on that rumor circuit?
Yeah, there's a few names that came up. Most of the time, it's just teams checking. Hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Would you consider this guy or that guy? So yeah, there's a few other names that were talked about. I don't think I got really anywhere or anything serious with anybody else. And to be honest with you, Kuzmenko kind of came out of the blue today. And that just made sense. It's not like we were shopping him, but he's an unrestricted free agent. There's a need and a fit there with LA, and kind of worked for us as well. So that one got done pretty quick.
Danny, I gotta imagine Scott Laughton had a ton of interest. Are you willing to say just maybe how many teams or how many calls you got on him?
It's tough to tell, how many teams were serious, because teams they're trying to figure out if, first of all, if he's available and what's the price range. Some teams, and it's like anything else, they don't want to show too much interest. So it's really tough to tell. I probably talked to 14 or 15 teams on him along the way, even some teams that were not in the playoffs for a different reason. They had some interest. So there's a lot of interest. It's really hard to tell how serious it was for how many teams.
The reports were that the bar was really high for Ristolainen in particular. What I guess makes him so, and Torts has talked about him too, right?
Yeah.
How much he loves the guy, it seems. What makes him so valuable, I guess, to the current group and where you guys are at?
Well, his play mostly. The way his play just keeps improving. Since I don't know since when. I mean, he at first it was a little tough, but under this coaching staff, and I know he's dealt with an injury last year, but under this coaching staff, his play just keeps getting better and better. And it's no secret that we'd like to get in the playoffs this year, no doubt about it. Hopefully next year we can take a run at it. And we see him as a guy that you get in the playoffs, he becomes very, very valuable. I know he's never played there, but the type of hockey that he plays, the physicality, the size that he brings, and now on top of it, the way he plays with his stick, the way he skates the puck out of trouble. He's chipping in offensively. He's a guy that when you're on the ice against him, you're on your heels a little bit. You got to be aware where he's at all times. So it's just his play. His play has been just keeps improving, getting better and better. We feel if we traded him out of our top 6, or you could say top 4, it would leave a huge hole. And that's why we never considered anything serious, and teams were just not willing to pay what we felt the return is on him for us.
I guess following up on that with Bristol, and you guys have a number of young defensemen down in the minors that are closing in on NHL readiness. How do you go about getting them chances at the NHL level if there are no spots available at the NHL level for them to play?
Well, when they're ready, we'll make room for them. An example of that is now Emile Andre's on his way up. Will rejoin the team. And Emile is earning it the hard way. And he'll probably be here for a little while now. I would expect him to be here till the end of the year. But you have to earn it. You have to play well to get that recall, and we will make the hard decision to make room when guys are ready.
I know, for the almost 2 years you've been in charge here, it's been mostly subtracting, right?
Yeah.
And for various reasons. I know GMs often say, like this time of year, you have a lot of conversations trying to set stuff up for the off season. When do you expect, I guess, to start adding?
I wish it was now. Again, the team will let us know. I think we're getting closer and closer. And we're looking into it now. We started doing that this trade deadline. It wasn't quite the right time. But more importantly, it's finding the right player. It's not just the timing of it. It's finding the right player. We've seen that in the past here. We've seen that from other teams when they decided, it's one thing they decide, okay, it's time to do it, and they add the wrong player. And that's what we're trying to be careful with, making sure we bring the right players when the time is right. So it's a combination of both.
Hey, Dave, what would you say, broad-based, so Flyer fans that are out there, have things progressed the way that you kind of envisioned them while coming in here? You got to take it a little slow, you assess it, and then go from there.
Yeah.
What would you say to fans out there that are kind of unsure about where things are right now?
What I would say is that we're in a really good spot. It's probably progressing a little quicker than that I even expected. Some of our young guys are stepping up. You look at the play of Mishkov, Cates' line, and I know Urson has had a bad game against Calgary, but he's taken a step since Christmas. So there's a lot of positives. We're getting younger and younger as a team, and I think after I'm almost scared to look at our age group after today, but we're definitely going to be near the top of the youngest group in the NHL. So to me, that's exciting. We're going in the off season with 7 picks in the top 50 at this point, or right around there. That's exciting. And that group, but we've said there's 3 groups of draft, starting with Mishkov's draft, Luchenko, and then this year's draft. Those guys are going to be the bulk of our core players, we hope in 5 years from now. So we're going in the right direction. We're really excited about that. The way I see it, we're just going to keep getting better and better. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's probably the toughest part, is the patience needed to get there. But I'm really excited about the way things are evolving.
And did you see examples while you were still a player, and then immediately after, examples of teams that more or less either made trades or went for a free agent for the sake of doing that, in your opinion?
And you mean that didn't really work, you mean?
Way into the way you're approaching it.
Yes, in both ways, and then there's been additions that have been really good and help turn a team around quick, and then there's ones that have hurt for a long time. So I don't have all the answers, but we're trying to be careful to bring in the right players, and not just that. It's not just about the timing thing. It's about the right type of players that we're going to need when the time comes. What's that?
The right mix here.
The right mix is a good way to say it. It's making sure you don't add up on top of what you already have, or there's going to come a time where we're going to have to take some chances when we know that. We just don't feel this is that time yet, or that player is available right now.
Danny, I know John Tortorella has said a couple times, somewhat jokingly, that you guys aren't going to spend this upcoming summer, but it does look like you'll have some money coming off the books for this off season. You spoke a little bit about it, but do you think you guys could maybe tap into free agency this upcoming off season?
It's possible. It's too early to tell who's there, who's not. We definitely have a little bit more flexibility. It looked like we were still last summer. We were still 2 years away from it. There's going to be a little opening this coming summer. It's too early to tell if it's the right time to be aggressive, or if the right player will be there. Realistically, down the road, it's going to open up even more when some of the dead money is able to come off the books. But yeah, there's going to be a little opening this year, and it's possible that we're able to do some things with it, but I don't know to a degree yet.
Nikita, you said that you guys were targeting him, but what was it about his game that makes him so interesting?
He and I'll be honest, I rely a lot on our scouts for that. I haven't seen a lot of them. I've seen a few shifts here and there. He seems very energetic, big body that is strong on the puck, can make plays. What I was told is that he needs to work within a structure, needs to learn to work within a structure. But there's a lot there. The size, the energy, the competitiveness is what I was told is high end.
You do have some room for other call-ups besides Emil now. So who do you know which folks?
Yeah, I think the plan, I would say right now, the plan is to bring Lixell enables for the weekend. So that's something that we're, now that the shift goes, to the roster and eventually, our free agents and college players, junior players, what we're going to do with them, and also the draft. So we kind of had a push here till 3 p.m. and now we're starting to shift towards different things.
Is Jet, what could we see Jet back at some point?
So that's all part of what we need to discuss, and all the rules and what we're allowed to do. And I try to be careful and respectful of his junior team, because they're battling for a playoff spot right now. So we're trying to be respectful there. But we're going to start looking into it a little deeper now.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, guys. It'll go to the AHL to start. Yeah.